Howdy, you guys always ask what we do for maintenance in between trips because we're always out and about and always hitting the trails. So there's a saying about Bronson. Bronson's preventative maintenance is if it prevents Bronson from wheeling, then he'll do the maintenance. But there is some things that I do that I know need to be done to make sure that I can keep wheeling as much as I do. And I'm gonna let you know the things that I go through to make sure that the buggy is always in good shape and ready to go for the next weekend. The first thing that I think is one of the most important things that I do is I have CTMU joints, and those take grease, and I'm really anal on greasing those. All right, greasing is not a big deal. A lot of people act like it's a huge deal and it takes a lot of time. All you do is jack it up, put it out of rear. It spins real easy, and you just got 4 of these on each side. You got yourself a nice grease gun like this. I use the CTM grease because I'm using CTMs. I typically give it a couple squirts until you feel some good pressure. You know it's nice and packed in there. Then you spin to the next one. My least favorite part are grease boogers. These things literally will wipe on your pants, get on your fingers, and then you'll touch everything in the garage. That's got to be the worst part of greasing your axles, but just make sure to grab a rag and wipe that booger off. It'll save you a lot of time and frustration later. Grease boogers. Next thing that I try to do every trip is check all my fluids. The more in tune you are with the buggy, the more you're gonna know what it needs to be able to be in tip-top shape. We're gonna go over some of the obvious stuff. Obviously, I mean, you guys probably know this, but I'm gonna tell you just because it's what I do. So first off, you always wanna check your engine oil. All right, I am right at the perfect fill mark, so that's good. So by keeping an eye on that, you'll know if your buggy's using stuff, or if you lost some, you can go back and remember like, oh man, was I super sideways? Should I check my pan to see if maybe there's some oil down there from any air vents, anything like that. It just helps be in tune with your buggy, and you'll start figuring out your buggy and know what it needs and know what it wants. So engine oil looks good. All right, so next we're gonna go ahead and check our trans fluid. Now, knowing your buggy is everything, we run quite a bit more in than what you'd usually run just because we're going straight up and sideways, vertical. We run a little high just as a safety precaution. So going by the mark really doesn't matter too much to us. It's going by what we know, but I know this buggy well. Also, if you're buying a new buggy, these are things to ask the previous owner, because otherwise you're gonna have to figure out over time what it wants. And it's just easier to ask like, hey, what's this trans want? Or see if they can show you where it's at, and then you can make a mark yourself, so that way you know what it wants. So now that we got the trans, the motor, we're gonna go over here. It's always good just to check this, you know. It's easy to top off on the trail for cooler water and stuff. Yep, that's about right. It's about right where that shadow is right there. Now we're gonna go over here and check my hydraulic fluid for my steering, because if you don't have that, you ain't steering. And this one, I find all the time that it runs low because if I'm straight up and off camber, if I have both of those happen to me at the same time, then it will bleed out a little bit. Not much, but over time, it will show that it's a little lower. Right now it's, I don't know, about a ½ inch lower than I usually like it. Since I have some SWEPCO, which that's exactly what PSC recommends, I'm gonna go ahead and top that off. Good shot at the top. Since we're over in this area, you always wanna check your air filter. This one is actually absolutely crusty. So this is about as long as I would run it. You can see we live in a desert climate. There's tons of dust on the southwest. So if you're following another buggy, dude, sometimes it eats filters every couple trips. Sometimes you can get away with like a month and a half. It all depends on how many trips you're running and how many buggies you're behind. If you're always leading, you're usually pretty good. But if you're behind somebody, it's gonna cake it up, and you just wanna make sure that filter's clean, get the best performance. One thing I always like to do is I always have 2 filters. That way I've got one ready to go. So this one's bad, I can just take it off, put it on the shelf, put this one on. All right, since we're talking about air filters and needing to clean it, I'm gonna go ahead and do it, because if I don't, I'll forget. And I don't wanna be doing that. So you can tell the difference. Super caked, super dirty, new one. So you take that one off the shelf. Now this one is gonna go right to the, I'm gonna make Jess really happy. It's gonna go right to the laundry room, and it's gonna sit in the laundry sink. And that will remind me that I need to clean that, and I will. And once I clean it, I'll come put it out on the shelf, and then it'll be ready to be sprayed. So that way it's good to go for the next time this needs to be changed.
So it's sitting in the laundry sink is going to remind you, or is it Jess that's going to remind you?
It's going to remind you to yell at me. And that will remind me to do it. Otherwise, I may forget. And I guess you should really be checking to see if there's any leftover breakfast still on the grill. Just pulled this off of the head. So this looks like breakfast from 3 weeks ago. So check to make sure you don't have any breakfast still in your engine. You don't have to check this every time. Again, you're gonna hear me say this so many times. Knowing your buggy is the most important thing, so you'll get to know if you need to check it. My axles don't hardly ever leak. And if they started to, then I would check, or if I went through like massive amounts of water that was over my axles for a long period of time, like a breakdown or something, like I'll check to make sure there's no water in there. So once you get the cap off, I don't know, like I said, I know this level and I know where it's at. I usually just find something that's super clean. In this case, it's a zip tie, just to see where the level's at and to make sure the oil's good. Please make sure not to drop that in there. All right, so you can see that does not look like it has any water in it. It looks a little honey. It looks a little used. I've got some serious life out of that though, and that thing is right about where it needs to be, which is like right here, which is pretty much at the tube. So that is plenty. Get to know your buggy, check your levels. Once you've done that enough, you know about how much it will go through if you have a leak. In my case, I don't have leaks. If it starts, then I'll know that I need to check more.
Damn, Daniel, what are those?
One of the most important things that I wish I would have learned a lot earlier is tire maintenance. Now I always knew, like, you hear people say, oh, check your tire pressures, check your tire pressures. But when I was dealing with 33s, 35s, 37s, it wasn't as big of a deal to me because, like, I just let them eat. You know what I mean? Like, I run low tire pressure. It's fine. The lower the better. Everything's good. I've got bead locks, right? Well, when you're running 42 sticky on sticky compounds, like, seriously, it matters because these tires are more expensive than a motor. Ask me how I know. I've replaced a motor in this thing. My motor was $1,500 less than a new set of stickies. So that shows you that you should probably put as much maintenance into your tires as you do your motor. And it's super easy. You just check to make sure they're at the exact pressure that you want. One of the biggest things is when you get these big tires like this, when you're going up and down in elevation all the time, that affects that massively, especially when you're running low tire pressure, and so does temperature change. And we usually go in fall and spring, which have the biggest temperature changes there is. And that's gonna massively, drastically change how much sag, flex that you get out of these sidewalls. One of the most common tire issues I see are sidewall pinches. You always hear someone say, oh, a rock cut my tire. I do enough video editing and I've seen enough tires blow from all the manufacturers that the most common way these blow is from when they get too low a pressure, and when a sharp rock comes in, the sharp rock's not cutting it, the sharp rock's putting a high amount of pressure in one designated spot that pushes down, and the wheel and the rock will pinch the sidewall. Sidewall gash like this, or you'll have two sidewall gashes from the pinch, and that's something that's super preventative. It takes like 2 seconds to check your tire pressure and make sure it's good to go. So that is one of the biggest #1 tips I can do to save you guys some money and like not ruin one of your trips. I don't know if you noticed, but we just got Dirty Lives, and these ones are the Canyons, and they are freaking balling. And I got me a new set of tires. Now I know a lot of you guys are gonna put in the comments, oh, what are you running for pressures? And I'm gonna tell you exactly what I run. I run in the BFGs, I run 10 in the rear, 9 to 10 in the rear, and I run 11 to 12 in the front. Front's got more weight, it's gonna have more squish, so I put, you know, a little less in the rear. There's no real exact tire pressure that I can say that I use that you should use. You need to know your buggy, and also the weight of your buggy and what you do with your buggy drastically changes what tire pressure you need in. That's pretty much what I do on a in-between trip basis, or I try to do. I'm not perfect at it. We all know the whole preventative maintenance with me, not the best at it, but I'm good enough to where I'm going out every weekend. So that's kind of what I do. But the biggest thing, the biggest hack that you can do for preventative maintenance between trails is listen to your buggy, know your buggy. When you're driving, if you hear that new noise, take note of it. When you hear a noise that's new and you find it, it's gonna let you know if you need to replace it or if you can let it ride. And knowing it's half the battle. Then you can either say, yes, it's good, or shoot, I need to replace that and get rid of that noise. And knowing your buggy. Knowing your buggy's levels, knowing how quick your buggy goes through the levels, and knowing that is by checking and driving and knowing what your buggy likes.
Sponsored in part by BF Goodrich Tires, Warren Industries, KC Highlights, and Axle Off-Road Helmets. Best way to support this channel is give that subscribe button a little skiddly do, diddle that notification bell, give this video the fat finger, and leave a dirty little comment below. Rec Gear now has merch and buggy accessories at recgear.com, so don't forget to go spend that money that mama don't know about. As always, thanks for watching.